Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randle and Gus Kearns.
Welcome back to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast, where we continue on the train, on the mission to preview all 357 Division I college basketball teams. I'm your host, Mike Randle. You can follow me on Twitter at RandleRant. And today we have an old friend of the podcast, Tom Noie. No one knows ND basketball like Tom does a fantastic job covering Notre Dame men's hoops, the South Bend Tribune, since 1992. Follow him on Twitter at TNoieNDI. Tom, welcome back to Screen the Screener. How you doing?
It was 93 degrees with the heat index in South Bend today. We got 3 hours of Notre Dame football practice. I felt like I was going to melt at Notre Dame Stadium, but I'm ready to talk Notre Dame hoops. Let's get it going.
That's awesome. Yeah, you stay busy, man, year-round for the Fighting Irish, that's for sure. So we're on our mission here. We're previewing all 357. I start with the same question. It's not a secret. Last year, coming into the season, what were the expectations and how did COVID change or possibly enhance certain parts of the year for Notre Dame?
Expectations, maybe less than zero. Like with everything that was happening with COVID, you talk to Mike Brey, you talk to the members of his coaching staff, they felt like they'd be lucky that they would have gone to a Final Four or won a national championship had they played 15 games. That was it. Like that was their expectation. That was their ceiling because of everything going on with COVID. You talked with Notre Dame Athletic Director Jack Swarbrick in the fall, and I remember asking Jack, I said, you're jumping through all these hoops for college football. What are your expectations for college basketball? And he said flat out, you know what? Not very high. Like it's going to be a struggle to get through the season. And Mike Brey was the same way. They felt like if we can get to 15 games, no matter if we're playing at home, we're playing on the road, we're playing in front of fans, whatever it was, if they could get to 15 games and they can get 15 games in, that would be a major win given everything that they had to deal with last season. Because like you said, it was a season like no other. And it was a season that Notre Dame was going to struggle for myriad reasons due to COVID.
If you look at the season, you look at the non-conference, they had some strong games, of course, early on. Michigan State, Detroit, they won a close one at home. Ohio State away was a high-scoring game. Kentucky. So then you get into the regular season within the conference, and it was rough. It started 0-5, like you said, but then they got some momentum middle of the year. Beat BC, won Miami away. Beat Pittsburgh away, beat Wake Forest, beat Duke away. And I remember that Duke game, Mike, because I thought that was a bad matchup for Duke. Notre Dame played very, very well. Probably going to tell me one of the best games of the year. And then, of course, at the end, they struggled a little bit. But I would think they found their mojo there. Middle of the year, started putting up some big-time points. You come away against Duke, scoring 93 in Cameron. I don't care if there's no fans there. That's impressive.
They were finally able to find, like you said, their mojo during the middle of the season, because the first part of the year, Mike Brey, like we talked about, he figured if we're only going to get 15 games in, let's just go for it. Hey, Tom Izzo's on the phone. Tom Izzo wants us to come up and open the season at Breslin Center in East Lansing. Mike Brey had a team that had no business playing at Breslin Center, but Brey was like, you know what? Screw it. We're going up to Michigan State. We'll play Michigan State. We'll go down to Rupp Arena, where they actually won for the first time in school history in Lexington in early December. But that early schedule, like there was never any time, because Mike Brey thought, look, this year it could end in the next hour. It could end in the next week. So we're going to go for it. And there was never any time. You look at that slate of games early, Ohio State, Kentucky, Duke, Purdue. That was back to back to back to back. Then they get Bellarmine. Bellarmine was a throw-in game that they kind of arranged at the last minute. Then the Bellarmine game, after that, then you go Virginia, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and Virginia again. So there was no way that this team was going to get any traction, whether non-conference or even in the league, given what the schedule was. They were finally able to get a couple of wins together. They won at Pittsburgh. Like that was a stunning win. They've had some stunning wins with Mike Brey. That game at Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh had just beaten Duke. They were the hot team in the league. Everybody's talking about the Panthers, and Notre Dame just went in there and rolled them at Peterson Event Center. So they win at Pittsburgh, they win at Duke. But then I think after that Duke game, everything this team wasn't able to do in the non-conference or wasn't able to do in the offseason, that caught up to them, and they basically just stumbled down the stretch.
Yeah, you talked about the Pittsburgh game. Listen, Notre Dame can always score. Mike Brey's always going to have teams that can fill the bucket up. In that Pittsburgh game, big win, 84-58 on the road, 13 of 24, Tom, 54% from three-point range. That will do against any opponent. But now we turn the page. It looks like we're slowly making progress with COVID. Should have fans back in the stands here. Let's talk about the players who will not be around in Notre Dame this year.
Well, there aren't many. They had two guys last year that were fifth-year seniors, both graduate students, both got they got a sixth year because of COVID if they wanted it. But Mike Brey sat down with both Nick Jogo and Juwan Durham at the start of the year, even before the whole COVID situation blew up. And they said, look, you've been here 5 years. You've kind of maxed everything out and what you're able to do for this program, what you might be able to do for this program. You're not going to come back for a sixth year. Like, if you want to still play college basketball, it's best for you to go somewhere else, have that 1 year, and just kind of go for it. And Nick Jogo said, I'm taking that year. I'm going to go play at Northeastern. Juwan Durham said, I'm not going to take that year. I want to play professionally. He played in the summer league with the Atlanta Hawks, didn't get much run with the Hawks. Will probably have to go over to Europe. But Juwan Durham was ready, and just it was time for him to go start the next phase of his basketball career. So those are the only two guys that they lose. They've got a wealth of experience and leadership coming back in 21-22.
And that's when they're at their best, is when they have an experienced team coming back, because those teams that they've had, the real strong one, of course, you and I have talked in the past about that Kentucky game. I'm telling you, Mike, they win that game. I think they're winning a national title years ago. But when they have a veteran team, they're going to play defense. And when they play defense and they're experienced, they're going to be dangerous. So talk about those veteran players returning this year that make up such a big core for the Fighting Irish.
This core that they have coming back, especially in guys like Prentice Hub, Nate Leshevsky, Dane Goodwin, all seniors, all get another year. Dane Goodwin has already said, I want to explore the fifth-year option, work on my master's, and get that taken care of. Prentice Hub, Nate Leshevsky, still kind of like, we'll wait and see what happens in 21-22 before we make a decision on our future. But that core group, those seniors who have been together now, this will be their fourth season. When they were coming into Notre Dame, they were ranked nationally one of the top 15 recruiting programs or recruiting classes in the country. So there's talent there. The issue with Notre Dame is we haven't seen it for whatever reason. It hasn't. We haven't seen the continuity. We haven't seen the consistency. But that group, there's just too much talent there for them not to have had yet a winning record in the Big East. Hopefully, this is the season that they do that. But if this team does anything, it's going to be led by Hub, Leshevsky, Goodwin, and to an extent, Cormac Ryan and Trey Wirtz.
Prentice Hub is incredibly fun to watch. He is a explosive guy. He can fill it up. He had big games against tough teams throughout the year. The issue with Prentice Hub, of course, is the turnovers, 3.2. But he brings a dynamic to Notre Dame, an athletic, aggressive scorer that I think you need. Leshevsky as well. Hub was third team All-ACC last year. Leshevsky was honorable mention. That's a good group. And Cormac Ryan can absolutely fill it up. He had some games as well. So I think that's a good group. And I think, Tom, the focus this year will be the core is back. The group is working through in the summer. And I think they just have to improve defensively because you have some explosive scores. And, of course, you're going to be able to shoot the three. Team shot at a 37% clip last year.
Well, Mike Brey was almost to a point brutally honest with this basketball team in the offseason. It said, look, we haven't gone to the NCAA tournament the last 4 years. And if you want to get back to the NCAA tournament, if you want to hear your name called on Selection Sunday, there's no secret, fellas. Like, we could get older, we can get bigger, we can bring in this guy, we can get more talented with the two local freshmen that they have. He said, but if we're going to do anything, you've got to really recommit on the defensive end. And that's where it's all started in the offseason. It started with bringing back Anthony Solomon as an assistant coach for his third tour of duty. Notre Dame has never gone to an NCAA tournament Sweet 16 without Anthony Solomon. The times that he's been on staff, they've been to 3 Sweet 16s, they've been to 2 Elite Eights, and they've won an ACC tournament championship with Slow as the main assistant and the main voice. That was their biggest move in the offseason, was bringing Anthony back. Mike Brey said, look, we've been around this college basketball block together. You know me. I know you. You go take these guys, get after them defensively, get into them, make them get into a stance and understand that if they're going to do anything this season, you've got to rebound, you've got to defend, you've got to box out, and you've really got to care because, like we've talked about, it comes easily some nights on the offensive end. It's defense that this program has long had a problem with.
And it looks like you have a transfer coming in from the Ivy League, Paul Atkinson, who can contribute to that as well. You get an inside presence. You get a player who can play both ends there. That's going to change things. I think Paul Atkinson is going to bring a lot to this program.
Paul Atkinson was like the got-to-get guy. Everybody talks about the freshman that you've got to get this freshman or you got to get that freshman. From like late November, early December, when there were signs that the Ivy League was not going to have a season in 2021, and Paul Atkinson was going to hit the transfer portal as a graduate transfer, Mike Bray looked at the transfer portal and said, our number one guy to get isn't a high school senior, isn't a traditional transfer. It's a graduate transfer in Paul Atkinson. And he really focused all his recruiting effort, really December, January, into getting Paul Atkinson, because we talked about they lose Juwan Durham. Paul Atkinson, the minute he stepped on campus, and he arrived like 2-3 days earlier than the rest of the guys to get his Notre Dame career started. The minute Paul Atkinson stepped on campus, he became a starter. He became a main guy, and he's going to be a guy that with along the likes of a Hub or a Leshevsky or a Goodwin, that's going to play 32, 33, 34 minutes a game for this program.
And there are two freshmen coming in, 4-star and a 3-star, right in the area in Indiana from South Bend. How are they going to do, and can they assimilate into a team that has a lot of veterans returning?
This is what's funny about the Notre Dame men's basketball fan base. Like a couple years ago, Jaden Ivey, who's now at Purdue, I see Jaden Ivey could be a top 10 NBA prospect a year from now if he decides to go that route. Jaden Ivey grew up basically on the Notre Dame campus. His mom, Niele, was an assistant coach. She's now the head coach of the women's program. And everybody around town, they couldn't believe that Mike Bray couldn't land Jaden Ivey because he was basically in their backyard. They're like, you got to recruit the South Bend, Mishawaka area. How come you can't get Jaden Ivey? Jaden Ivey goes to Purdue. So the next recruiting cycle, Mike Bray gets two guys, not one. He gets two. J.R. Konieczny from South Bend St. Joe and Blake Wesley from South Bend Riley. And all the Notre Dame fan base says is, look at Mike Bray. He's so lazy. He doesn't bother to recruit. He doesn't even leave the city of South Bend to go recruit people. So you're like, you know what? What does this guy need to do? But J.R. Konieczny and Blake Wesley are both going to be in the rotation. We saw a little bit in one of the open practices that we were allowed in July, and they may be freshmen, but neither of them play like freshmen. And the one thing that you really like about a guy like Blake Wesley is he's going to get after it defensively and put some pressure, some game pressure, some rotation pressure on the likes of a Trey Wirtz or a Cormac Ryan or a Dane Goodwin. Because if those guys aren't going to get in the stance, I'll tell you one thing, Blake Wesley's going to get in. He's going to play, and he's going to get in the stance, and he's going to get after you defensively.
That's great to hear. And of course, this year, I would think, Tom, that there's going to be a little bit more of a variance in the non-conference schedule. You know, I would hope that we would see something a little bit maybe up and down, a little easier than Ohio State, Kentucky, Duke, Purdue. But let me know, what does the Irish have in the non-conference this year?
Well, it's funny. We talked about the non-conference schedule last year when we rolled off Kentucky and Purdue and Ohio State. Don't forget, there was a game against Tennessee that was also thrown in there where Rick Barnes said, hey, Mike, I need a game. You want to play? Bray's like, you want to come up to South Bend? Rick Barnes said, let's do it. Tennessee got shut down with COVID where that game eventually got canceled. Okay. But they were going to play Tennessee too. So, yeah, that was like a once-in-a-lifetime thing or once-in-a-season thing for Mike Bray. He's not going to go that route. It'll be a more traditional non-conference schedule, to where you'll have the balance of a couple of big games here, maybe a couple of big games there, but then the soft cupcake type of not home schedule, to where this team needs wins. Like, it's a veteran team, it's an experienced team, but it's still a team that I don't know really knows how to win together. And to play those non-conference games in November and December. Now, they will get Kentucky at home. They will play a non-league game against Howard, at Howard, on campus at Howard, over Martin Luther King Day. in January. That one was scheduled for this January. That one got wiped out also because of COVID. And then they're also going to Maui. And the last time they went to Maui, Mike Brey took his shirt off, put a lei on, and they won the Maui Invitational Championship. Yeah, in 2017. Right. So it's going to be a better balance of really hard games and home games to where this team can get some confidence. Because again, they're going to play 20 ACC games, and 2 of those ACC games will be in December. So there will be plenty of challenges for this basketball team.
Listen, Tom, we appreciate a few minutes. Can't thank you enough. We have a veteran team in Notre Dame. They want to get back to the NCAA tournament, like you said. How do you think it's going to go this year? Do you think the Irish make it back? And do you think that all the battles they had through COVID last year pay off with a return trip to the NCAAs this year? What do you think?
I agree with what Mike Brey says when he says this is going to be really hard for them to get back. But I think there's something to prove. Remember, the last time this Notre Dame men's basketball team was actually on a court playing in the ACC tournament, they trailed North Carolina by 50. They were down 50 in the ACC tournament. They lost by 42. That hasn't sat well with any of the returning guys, Apprentice Hub and Nate Leshevsky and Dane Goodwin. They remember how embarrassed they were in Greensboro that night playing against North Carolina, which turned out to be Roy Williams' final win as North Carolina coach before he retired. Point. So they are driven to say they don't want their careers to end with 0 NCAA tournament trips. I think they find a way to get 10, 11, 12 ACC wins during the regular season and could sneak in there. And it doesn't matter. Mike Brey says, we'll go play the play-in game at Dayton. We'll be a 9 seed. We'll be a 12 seed. It doesn't matter. The goal this year, and as it should be every year, but the goal this year is just get back to the NCAA tournament just to get some of that swagger back that this program had when they went to consecutive Elite Eights in 15 and 16.
That's very fair. And when you have Prentice Hub, Goodwin, Leshevsky, and give me a little Cormac Ryan when he went 28 points at Cameron Indoor, and I think that is a recipe to get him back. Tom, can't thank you enough. Folks, Tom Noie covers Notre Dame basketball for the South Bend Tribune, has been doing it for 30 years. Nobody knows him better. One of the true greats in the industry. Follow him on Twitter at TNoieNDI. Tom, pleasure to talk to you. We appreciate the stop here. We're going to grab a beverage and keep the train going. I don't know where we're going next, but we love stopping here in South Bend. Thank you so much for a few minutes.
You got it, my man. Take care.